Let's do it.
Sounds great.
Sure.
Okay,
Great.
well, good morning, very early morning, afternoon, and midnight, everyone. My name is Yama, and welcome to Crypto Tonight, Polkadot episode 1. Yes, Polkadot. I haven't learned a lot while preparing for this episode. However, I'm still newbie. So tonight we are here to fully understand the world of Polkadot and we industry leaders. And they are Jack, partner of Hypersphere Ventures and advisor to Web3 Foundation and Acala, and Ruitao, the co-founder of Acala, Fabian, VP of Parity Technologies, and Shiliang, the CIO and managing partner of LedgerPrime. Great to have you all here. So first, brief introduction. Let's start with Jack.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having us on to talk about Polkadot and the markets and so forth. So my name's Jack. I started my career in crypto about 3 years ago at Web3 Foundation, where I was helping with everything from kind of marketing, technology integrations, and some stuff to do with the DOT token. And started Hypersphere Ventures in February and moved to that full time a couple months ago. So Hypersphere Ventures is a technology and venture firm focused on using on-chain governance to deliver outsized returns. And we also have an arm kind of focused on capital markets around DOT. So helping kind of the derivatives markets in DOT get started. And then also, of course, on the venture side, helping teams get started.
Thank you, Jack. Next, Shiliang.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. Yeah, always good to be on the show. But yeah, my name is Shiliang. I'm the CIO of LedgerPrime. We're a quantitative digital asset hedge fund started in 2017, mostly focused on systematic and algorithmic trading, market neutral strategies, but everything from liquidity provisioning and market making to the trading of derivatives and futures, perps, and options, especially, and obviously, very excited to have witnessed the launch of DOT, this year, and definitely, looking forward to helping to grow the market liquidity and ecosystem of DOT.
Thank you, Shiliang. And Shiliang and Jack, you're both morning heroes. Thank you very much. Next, Fabian.
Yeah, also thanks for having me. I'm a VP at Parity Technologies. We're like a core infrastructure technology company in the blockchain space. I'm with the company for most of the time since the company exists. So initially more focused on the Ethereum side of things, and now more and more focused on Polkadot. So we're the lead engineering team behind the core Polkadot protocol and a lot of the tools and infrastructure around it. In particular, like our flagship product is Substrate, on which a lot of these Polkadot parachains are built on.
Thank you, Fabian. Next, Ruitao.
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me, Yama. So my name is Ruitao. I'm the co-founder of the Acala network, one of the Parachain project, one of the primary builder on top of Substrate and Polkadot. We are building a specialized DeFi shard on top of Polkadot. So by having a set of financial primitive and exploring the possibility of the Substrate framework, we'll try to offer DeFi in a much more flexible way and with a lot more possibility on top of Polkadot. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, guys. So now moving on to our first topic tonight, DeFi in general. I think 99% of the DeFi projects are built on Ethereum today. How DeFi evolves beyond Ethereum? Ruitao, would you like to share your thoughts?
I think the DeFi market is still very in early stage. We can already see the possibility that DeFi is able to bring. You can already see a lot more possibility than you would see on a conventional market. For now, we can start to see a lot of conventional financial primitive being built on top of Ethereum. We can see a lot more value they can able to bring to the end consumers. But still, I mean, so far, DeFi is still a very heavy game. It doesn't make sense unless you have a certain amount of capital to get into the game, mainly due to a number of reasons, due to high fee or due to area of entries. So I think the DeFi space is still very early. There's a lot more room to grow. And hopefully we will see that more and more consumer adaptation to get into the DeFi space. And we can also see more and more like regulated way of like institution to also get into the DeFi space. But in my opinion, we are still in early stage, but we can see a lot more potential. I can already see how this space is going to revolutionize the conventional finance space.
How DeFi on Polkadot will look like?
Well, I mean, I would say that DeFi on Polkadot would behave similar way of, I mean, you will expect a typical expectation that you will get from the Ethereum experience, but refined. So if I think about that right now, DeFi is pretty much at this stage, it's money Lego built on top of on top of Ethereum. So dApps talk to other dApps, and one of the most impressive aspect of DeFi on Ethereum is the composability, right? So a protocol can talk to Polkadot, but for now, I see it's still limited to only on Ethereum. I do believe that slowly we're gonna transit into the interchain money Lego stuff. Like I think a lot of Bitcoin holders, they would like to see the utility value of Bitcoin being unleashed by this sort of decentralized protocol. People would like to unlock the time value of Bitcoin. People would like to use Bitcoin as collateral. We can already see that's happening with the WBTC amount minted on Ethereum start to grow, right? Yeah. So I think DeFi on Polkadot is more of like we trying to bring this money Lego within protocol, within application level to actual money Lego with like interconnected blockchains. And the other advantage of building on top of Polkadot or building on top of substrate in general is you have a lot more flexibility in terms of customization. If we look at the DeFi space right now, you pretty much get to customize all the rules of a particular protocol, but you don't get to customize anything down to the core level. I mean, you don't get to customize the underlying ledger. But on Polkadot, on substrate, you have the developer has the possibility to take a shot and customize it to fulfill their particular requirement in their domain. So in our case, in Acala's cases, we are a domain-specific blockchain. We are full-fledged blockchain ourselves, but we fine-tune and customize it for finance. And that I think is very, very exciting because you can do a lot more stuff that otherwise is very hard for you to do on the application level.
Thank you. How about you, Jack? How do you see the Polkadot expanding the market?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, so with, just like with Bitcoin, what we're seeing in Ethereum, at least right now, is the higher value, lower frequency transactions are crowding out everything else. So microtransactions, anything to do with gaming, or just anything like Ruitao said that's less than $10,000, maybe doesn't make sense to pay $10 to $30 in gas fees for. So I think Polkadot is the different shards on Polkadot, or the different parachains on Polkadot, kind of already scale what's possible there, especially with the use of trustless bridges between Polkadot and Ethereum. You could see some teams going cross-chain, some really big DeFi teams going cross-chain, and doing so in a way that kind of preserves their home on Ethereum in some cases. So, but I think another example is as Ruitao said, you have a lot more flexibility as a builder when you're building a blockchain than when you're building a set of smart contracts. So the Acala team is a really good example of this. I don't know, Ruitao, if you guys started building like in January, but you've been able to put into your runtime a decentralized exchange, staking derivatives, and a stable coin in like 9 months. And now you guys are already looking for a lot more to do. You've integrated EVM smart contracts, Inc smart contracts, so you're kind of a generalized platform with embedded into the actual core logic of the blockchain, all of these financial primitives. And that was like in 9 months. I think MakerDAO probably took like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years to get going. Polymath is another example of this. So you're seeing development time significantly compressed. And for that reason, hopefully innovation increases. And So I'm hoping that that continues and that there's just more use cases because of that, and paired with more throughput, more experimentation.
Thank you. And but like as majority of the DeFi token, for example, these days has fallen by half or more since their all-time highs. So has DeFi bubble burst? Like, would you guys like to talk to us about the hope of DeFi in general, or maybe Polkadot in particular, becoming the future of finance?
Maybe I will chip in my thoughts first, and then others can chip in their ideas. We are here for the long term. I do believe that we are still in the early stage. With any promising technology, I mean, it's inevitable that someone will try to speculate, and the market will get a little bit overhyped because you can have a glimpse of like what's possible. So I mean, on the Acala's term, I mean, what we actually focus or our prime value proposition is that we don't want to speculate a lot on the pricing. Instead, we will focus on what the fundamentals and what that's really matters from a project point of view. The fundamental that we're looking at is like how much value is being created, how much loan has been created, how much transaction the DEX is handling, how much derivative dots that we're minting, is it in an increasing curve, and how many developers actually are integrated with Acala, how many developers work on top of Acala. So those is the fundamental figures that we are looking at. In long term, we believe that the market is still in a very, very early stage. There's going to be up and down, but generally, I believe that it's ultimately going to have a lot more possibility than what we're seeing today.
Thanks. What are your thoughts on this, Fabian?
Yeah, so I think, you know, same story, we're in for the long run. And I mean, I've been through, you know, a bunch of like cycles in crypto. I think it's not, you know, we've seen it before, like we had the ICO craze, we had like a smaller, but also like not insignificant craze around like NFTs, and then around DAOs, and now we arrive at, you know, at DeFi. I think one thing you always see with these things is there's hype, and there's also like overhype, right? People are shooting over in terms of goals, but the core innovation usually stays, right? So like ICOs are still the centerpiece of blockchain funding. NFTs are still the centerpiece of blockchain gaming. DAOs are still the centerpiece of blockchain governance, and you know, automated market makers and liquidity farming and so on. We'll see, you know, what they will become, but they're also here to stay, right? So I think for us as an infrastructure provider, it's not so much about, you know, has the DeFi price fallen by 20% today or not? It's more, what is that core innovation that actually moves the needle on a, you know, on a 2 years, 5 years basis? And can we push the infrastructure to a point that makes that more usable, more powerful in to whatever extent, right? And that's very much what we try to do with Polkadot and with all the tools that we build around Polkadot. You know, to sum it up, I don't think this was the end of DeFi, for sure not. Maybe it was the end of like DeFi peak prices, but I don't even believe that.
Speculators.
Yeah, exactly. But certainly within this DeFi hype right now, there's some really, really major core innovations around how to bootstrap liquidity, how to distribute tokens, and so on, that are for sure here to stay, right? And I think those are the interesting pieces that we want to focus on.
Thanks. And Shiliang, remember to get your coffee. So Shiliang, from the DeFi background, what do you see is the real buyer for demand pushing up DeFi? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's and just to touch on kind of your last point, you know, that there's two ways to look at it, right? Yeah, I think, you know, if you're just looking from the peak, certainly maybe the craze, especially from a price perspective, it seems like it's come down a bit. But, you know, if you're looking from the beginning of the year or even, you know, the end of last year, and just looking at the plethora of kind of projects that have come up and just the speed of development, we're still very much, you know, far from kind of the very beginning, right? You know, from a market cap, from a price, from a development perspective. So it's grown tremendously despite, you know, having come down a bit from the summer craze. So it's very, very exciting to see. And I think we're at a stage where initially perhaps the people that were involved in, whether testing and building and trading DeFi were from kind of the crypto nascent native, parties that have been in the space for a while. But I think now we're starting to, see applications are being built to bridge, this kind of, very technical world to kind of new individuals and retail that are curious about the space. And so I think the next leg higher will be driven much more by kind of new individuals, new investors, and parties that are interested that haven't been involved in this first build up of DeFi. So that's that's very exciting to kind of anticipate and hopefully see.
2 words, long DeFi. Thank you, guys. So to have a better understanding of what Polkadot is and why it is important and how it's going to transform not only the crypto industry, but even possibly maybe the world as a whole in the years to come. So let's deep dive into the Polkadot ecosystem. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions like Jack, Shiliang, not Shiliang, sorry, Jack, Ruitao, and Fabian. So are you ready? So my first question is to Jack. So why building a Parachain is a new design space for DeFi compared to like smart contracts? Hi, Jack.
Yeah, for sure. I think we touched on it a little bit before. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I've had internet problems all morning. That's why I'm on my phone. So the I touched on a little bit with regards to the first answer. We're basically you're not dependent on the Ethereum virtual machine if we're going to compare it to what everyone knows on Ethereum. You're able to basically go and create your own virtual machine if you wish. You're able to use different smart contract languages if you wish. If you're using Substrate, you can have a different consensus mechanism. So you're or a transaction queue. I think in Acala, the Acala runtime might prioritize Oracle transactions rather than so Oracle transactions and the transaction queue kind of get bumped to first after we saw what happened in March with the Maker CDP liquidation auctions, where kind of the Oracle transactions were sitting in the queue and weren't able to get to the front of the queue very easily. So and then you can kind of choose if you want gas or what you want gas for, so that end users get to maybe not deal with the ETH token as much, depending on kind of what your blockchain is building. Or you could have a tokenless blockchain, right, attached to Polkadot and get security from the Polkadot relay chain without even having like an underlying token at all. So there's a lot of experiments yet to be run, and I'm hoping that both the power of building with Substrate and then connecting to Polkadot as kind of almost like what you could consider a layer zero, because there's still some kind of education for us to do in the market where Polkadot is a smart contract platform. You really can't build anything like a smart contract application directly on Polkadot, right? If you're deciding to build smart contracts, you have to do that on Acala or another potential future Parachain.
Thank you, Jack. Since you mentioned the transaction fee, because it's actually always a very big topic and concern. So my second question is to Fabian. So how does the transaction fee works actually in the Polkadot system with the Parachain?
Right. So it depends a little bit. Of course, Jack was also touching on like where in the Polkadot stack are you talking about? But I think the general notion that Polkadot brings that I think, or that I'm quite excited about, if it's in particular if you look at DeFi, is a upgrade path for applications or protocols that are heavily used. So if you take Uniswap as an example, I think Uniswap paid like well over 10 million US dollars in fee to Ethereum for its usage last month alone, right? And that's essentially a payment for the security, for the infrastructure that Ethereum provides. You could have something like Uniswap be deployed on a chain like Acala, and then when it's actually used as much as Uniswap is used today, right? There's an upgrade path that is becoming a native parachain, for example, right? And then you have very, very different economics that only revolve around capital cost of locking up dots, which if you run those numbers are significantly low, right? We're more talking about maybe $1 million a year or something like that, rather than 10 million a month. So suddenly this comes back to like this design space consideration, right? You can suddenly actually upgrade applications or protocols to a different fee model within the Polkadot ecosystem that is not bound to let's calculate every single execution step, put a gas fee on it, and then everyone just has to pay that blanket. And if too many people are using it, it just becomes unbearably expensive. So I think that's the power of Polkadot, and obviously that paired with, if you build your own chain, you have all the power. You're the king of your own little kingdom, right? You have the power to like choose the economics of that chain, whether you want to have transaction fees paid in your native token, or maybe in DOT, have something tokenless, whatever. So I think that actually that's what makes Polkadot sometimes hard to communicate. Is it's not this like oh, we've just built a sharded smart contract platform. You do exactly what you've done before, deploy smart contracts, but now it's scalable. But rather it's like, actually we just have more options, which makes it more confusing sometimes for people, but it also just makes it much more powerful.
Yes, so each parachain can have their own transaction fee economic model, which makes them probably more flexible to suit their own needs. Thank you. So, so next question is to Ruitao. So how specialized use cases like a DEX and a lending platform will work on parachains?
Well, I mean, yes, just to echo Fabian's point, right? So we see the parachains is a form of wholesale security from the relay chain. So on Ethereum right now, there's if you deploy a DApp, it's a pay-as-you-go security model. I mean, the end user actually is liable for paying those fees, and ultimately those are the fee paid to the blockchain as security. So on the parachain, because the project get to customize pretty much every aspect of how the logic of this particular parachain works, including the fee. So if a project is able to secure a parachain slot, you can assume that you can. I mean, it's more of like this project has wholesale a year worth of security from the relay chain, and how did they decide to resell those security is completely up to the project. I mean, if it's safe to do so, the project can even make it free to transact if the value can be otherwise created from other avenues. So DEX, with that with that as the foundation, you can already imagine that on Acala we can enable transactions like if you are transacting with AUSD, which is the stable coin that in the Acala shard, if you are transacting the US dollar stable coin, you can pay AUSD as the gas fee. If you are transacting with RAM Bitcoin, with RAM BTC, which is going to be available on Acala, you can pay RAM BTC as the gas fee. So those is very, very different from that the user would have to obtain a foreign token in order to transact, whilst still maintaining the security. So that's one innovative way that we come up with. The other way of like how a lending protocol or how the DEX could work, and especially on the lending protocol, like if a user have enough position on a particular, like for example, if you want to enable that, like if a user have enough position in a particular protocol, you consider this user already have enough stake. It's viable to say that then this user could be eligible for some free transaction or things like that. So those will all become possibility. I mean, with the governance pieces of the parachain or the substrate in general, the possibilities is endless, which we can touch a little bit more on, like how the actual governance works on Polkadot.
Would you like to talk a little bit more about how the dApps can be deployed on the blockchain and how parachains they communicate like with each other?
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, to echo what Fabian mentioned earlier, like on Polkadot, you don't actually build smart contract, you build parachain. What Polkadot enable you is a project to build a specialized blockchain and being able to bootstrap and secure by the relay chain. So the relay chain actually offers three key pieces of, three key pieces of infrastructure needed for a blockchain to bootstrap on the Polkadot ecosystem. First, it offers security. And by secure, it means that the rule, you got to design the rule as a project, but the rule is going to enforce by the relay chain. So that's the first aspect that the relay chain provides. The relay chain also provides the communication between different parachains. And ultimately also the relay chain provide the governance process for how the whole protocol evolves. The communication process of like how parachains talk to each other, there's a protocol that's delivered as one of the flagship product by the Parity and by the Web3 Foundation. Is called the XCMP, which allow Parachain to talk to Parachain in a secure and fast way. So if you want to take a little bit deep dive, there's actually a number of messages that can be passed between Parachain and relay chain. Obviously, you can pass message from the Parachain to relay chain. That's more of like you are asking the Polkadot's Parachain, the relay chain to do something for the Parachain. There's also the other way, like the relay chain can also pass message down to the Parachain. So that's like the relay chain instruct the Parachain to do something. And ultimately, there's like each Parachain can talk to each other in a trustless way. So let's say they Acala is the finance chain, and there's gonna be some gaming chain, maybe some game has been built and have a lot of popularity, and they become a Parachain. There's some communication needed between these two shards. So maybe the gaming chain, they would like to use the AUSD as their trading currency, and they can talk directly in a trustless way, as long as these both two Parachain agree and talk to each other. And think about that, the possibility of like each Parachain is also a full-fledged blockchain. So if you think about a gaming chain, or if you think about Acala, application can also deploy on top of this shard. So, so you can think about, if you, in the case of a gaming chain, maybe someone can deploy a casino on top of that, and maybe or loot box process. Player can start to open lucky draws. On Acala's cases, I mean, we can see a lending protocol being deployed on top of Acala. We can see maybe a prediction market being deployed on top of Acala. So those is like one more way to deploy on top of Polkadot. You can deploy with either Parachain, or you can deploy as a dApp on top of Parachain.
Thank you, Rita. I don't know if Fabian and Jack has anything to add here.
No, I mean, I think that's that, like, in terms of like the option you have, there's a lot of nuance to it, I'd say, right? In particular, we start talking about para threats and kind of like different economic models around how to actually deploy shards. But overall, I think this is the new concept, right? The new concept is we're not talking about deploying smart contracts. We're actually, you know, we're getting a new abstraction layer in, and suddenly we have like an ecosystem of ecosystems, and that's really what makes Polkadot powerful.
Yeah, and to kind of add to that, trying to just continue to educate the market on what exactly Polkadot is and what it enables. In Polkadot, there's the DOT token, which is just like other proof of stake networks, useful for governance. But in Polkadot, it's slightly different. We could get into the governance bit and why it's a little bit more powerful in Polkadot because it relies on WebAssembly and so forth. But then the second piece is obviously staking. And then the third piece, which hasn't been explored yet because parachains haven't been deployed, is parachain bonding. So in DOT kind of economics, there's this targeted ratio that the research team did on, like, basically ratio is 5-3-2. So 50% of DOT's used for staking in operating and securing the network, 20% or 30% used for parachain bonding. So hopeful parachains need to bond some dots to get a slot, and then 20% are liquid. So really the scarce resource mediated by the DOT token, just like in Bitcoin it was bytes, and in Ethereum it was kind of computation and gas, is parachain slots. So that's really what the DOT token like tries to mediate. So if we kind of imagine, just like back of the napkin, like there's 100 parachains and 30% of dots are used for bonding to get a parachain slot. That's a couple million dots per parachain slot, but you get the dots back at the end, so it's not like an explicit cost. But point being, there's only 20% of dots left for people to hold or to trade around, use for liquidity mining, whatever it is. So by design, DOT is not a very liquid token, and for that reason, it's really important, I think, that some of the work that we've been trying to do at Hypersphere and LedgerPrime has been helping with as well, is getting a kind of a secondary or derivatives market for DOT going, because you have kind of two issues I see. One is you have this token that a lot of builders need to build on Polkadot, that's meant to be a liquid. They need to get that to be able to build on Polkadot. And then there's the issue of once they get it to build on Polkadot, how do they do their financial planning around that, right? DOT is not a stable coin. It fluctuates up and down, and can be, you know, volatile, just like Bitcoin or ETH. So what we've been trying to do is basically create a derivatives market for DOT. I think Polkadot was, you know, it listed at in a couple months ago at $3 billion market cap. I think that's the biggest ever launch for a blockchain by market cap. So it's obviously a big capital market as it is, but it's a young kind of capital market. So the financial markets around it has to be built out. And so I think the first option was written for DOT in the fastest time. Also that there's been an option written for a new digital currency. And so we're working hard to try to create this derivatives market. So some of the speculation, if you want DOTs, but you don't want to participate in the network, you want exposure to DOT though, we're trying to create products so that you can get exposure without artificially increasing the DOT price because you're not actually using it. Because what could happen is you could see situations where, like, the Acala team is running probably an initial Parachain offering in the future where they're crowdsourcing from DOT holders DOTs to bond on their behalf, and then potentially giving them ACA token to do that. There could be times whenever, if there's really popular initial Parachain offerings or crowdsourced Parachain offerings where the DOT price goes up 10, 20, 30% in a very short amount of time, which is not exactly ideal for a bunch of different reasons. And so how can you basically smooth that volatility out? And then furthermore, if you are contributing DOTs, you're basically taking to a Parachain offering, you're basically taking a bet that the token you're going to get in return is going to increase more than DOTs plus the staking rate you would have had on DOTs. So there's about 10% inflation right now. So there's kind of two moving pieces. You're taking DOT directional risk, and then you're taking risk on this new Parachain token that you're getting in return for lending your DOTs. So how can we simplify that, right? How can we have a product that basically simplifies that to maybe one or two of the variables? Ideally, just people who want to contribute to get like ACA don't have to take risk on DOT. So there's a lot of financial planning that has to go into basically day one, your tokenomics to build on Polkadot, or on a go forward basis, your inflation model to build on Polkadot. That we're trying to help educate people on, but also have like the capital markets there, the liquidity there, the derivatives there that allow people to take bets on DOT without disrupting the flow of the network, or build on DOT without undue financial burden.
Many times DOTs you mentioned, and by the way, I just bought some DOTs last night. Like, no joking, I really just bought some. So, and since you mentioned derivatives and tradings already, so I would like to now talk to Shiliang a little bit more about it. So, so obviously a lot of folks has used like crypto in general as a sort of speculative vehicles. And Shiliang, we would like to know like more about the DOT markets and what your thoughts are on these trading trends and in derivatives and spot markets.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of quickly build off of Jack's point, I think it's great that there are firms already from day one of DOT's launch, you know, like Hypersphere and others that are really focused on actually the tokenomics and kind of the financial, quote unquote, financial planning for the various projects that are building on, you know, Polkadot. I think this was something that was missing perhaps in 2017 with a lot of the projects that initially launched on, you know, Ethereum. I think there wasn't kind of a comprehensive, you know, strategy in the ecosystem then for a lot of these projects in terms of, they raise a bunch of, capital on Ethereum, and now they're kind of planning for the roadmap and project launches and just managing the treasury operations. And there really wasn't, I would say a strategy around, for many projects, around doing so. Obviously, there's a lot of differences between, Ethereum and Polkadot, but from a general perspective of just, managing that capital wisely was, extremely missing and lacking back then. So it's very, I would say, encouraging that, the Polkadot ecosystem is kind of taking a different view. And then on top of that, I think one thing that, as perhaps a similar analogy that I see for DOT and Acala in regards to the trading world is, one thing that is a huge issue in kind of capital markets in crypto is this concept of cross-platform, collateralization, right? And the idea that it's still extremely capital inefficient to kind of trade in crypto, in the sense that positions that you have on numerous kind of venues and entities and derivatives don't necessarily offset with each other, even though from a risk perspective, they do, right? And so the analogy that I, as a trader and as a fund manager, kind of look at the DOT ecosystem in terms of their kind of like cross-platform interoperability, and as well as, perhaps for Acala, just the, which enables kind of staking pools that can be, tokenized and staked assets to be used as liquid assets. It's almost like enabling this kind of cross-platform collateralization that's missing in the trading world, right? And so, the fact that you can go from blockchain to blockchain and have these different assets, be eventually, linked up, even from a trading perspective, I think holds a ton of promise, just from a capital, efficiency perspective, and in terms of opportunity. And then finally, again, in terms of what Jack mentioned, it's no different, right, from, in the Bitcoin ecosystem for miners or lenders that have to manage their kind of the operations and treasury. And so from a derivatives perspective, it makes a lot of sense to kind of, work to develop this ecosystem to smooth out the volatility that exists in any crypto assets, so that the developers and builders can kind of keep their heads down and focus on building and not have to worry about the large price fluctuations that are inherent in crypto assets. And so simple things like yield generation, kind of downside protection are structures that we've seen, and interest that we've seen in kind of the Polkadot ecosystem. And so I think a lot of firms, like ours, are working hard to make these products, as liquid and accessible as possible.
Thank you, Shiliang. Ruitao, would you like to add your thoughts about derivatives in Polkadot here?
Yeah, I think one of the unique offering of the Acala shard is that we have this staking derivative built in a trustless way. So the Acala protocol is a set of financial primitive, and one of the primitive that we offer is what we call liquidot. The liquidot is essentially a trustless way to stake and have a share of the stake pool. So we actually have a concept that's coming up. We might do a little bit of promotion of that, or we call like if you hold DOT right now, and if you want to stake, the process is actually not very intuitive. I mean, there's something that can be improved, but now you have to choose a validator. You need to understand the economic, like it's like an advanced version of staking. But on Acala, we can have a concept like swap to stake. So simply by depositing the DOT into a trustless staking pool, the validators, nomination, all the other stuff has been taken for you in a trustless way, and what you got is what you get is some L DOT tokens. The L token is liquid. It's the representation of the share in the staking pool, and it's also yield bearing. So as long as you hold to L dots, you will be earning the staking reward. So, and if you want to redeem, you also can redeem the L dot back into DOT. So the L dot is as good as DOT. We also offer some flexibility, some feature on the redeeming part as well. So like assuming that you have L dot and you want to redeem back to DOT, you still have to bound to the 28 days unbounded period, like you have still to wait. But there's now one more option that you can redeem immediately. So if you in some cases you really would like to redeem and have that dot available in your wallet right now, as long as you pay a certain fee to cover the otherwise lost stake of the pool, you can redeem the dot immediately. And I think the instant redemption plus the liquid of a stake dots is very attractive for traders, for users, or even for builders. So there's projects that we are already working with. They are going to use L.dot as crypto because let's face it, on the proof of stake network, if you want to lock up DOT as crypto, it's very hard to compete for that because otherwise those staking reward will be lost. So I think that's something very unique, and it might become very, very popular when we launch the L.dot. And now we also announced that we're going to launch on Kusama as well today. So the LKSM is the Kusama version of the liquid dots. It's also coming.
Thank you, Ruitao. Advertising time over. Well, thank you very much for explaining very well to us. Thank you. So my next question is to Fabi. So who are the ecosystem players? Like who are they and why they're important to the Polkadot ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think there's like many ways you can categorize ecosystem players. I mean, I could just like name drop stuff, but I don't think that's super helpful. Like the way I have a mental model how I think about Polkadot ecosystem players, in particular on the chain level, not so much on the application layer. And the lines are blurry there, and it's really more of a mental model than real buckets you can put every team in. But generally, those are the trends we're seeing. So. One is domain-specific chains. So those are generally everything is about specialized blockchains, right? We will have general purpose, like very general purpose blockchains on Polkadot as well, and I think there's a place for them, but they aren't necessarily as interesting, I think, as specialized chains because that's really what Polkadot is about. So if we're looking at the specialized chains, you have domain-specific chains, meaning they pick a problem domain and build a chain from the ground up to solve that problem domain. So as an example, a team called Plasm is building a chain that's from the ground up optimized for optimistic rollups, right? It's the problem domain of scalability they're trying to solve on that chain. There's a team called Kilt Protocol, which is a chain fully optimized for kind of like identity and attestation, right? That's a problem domain they're trying to solve. Then there are like vertical or industry specific chains. So I'd say Acala falls loosely into that category, right? We're saying like DeFi is an application vertical, gaming would be an application vertical, and so on. And you say, okay, we're thinking not so much in problem domains, you're coming from the user side, right? The application side, and think about what are all the things we need in a chain to enable these kind of applications in a specific vertical. And the third one is really like just application specific chains. So we really go in and say like, we have one specific, potentially even consumer facing application in mind. And we build this like one chain, one application kind of paradigm where the whole chain is just specialized around this one application. And obviously you see a mixture of these things, right? But that's generally how you can categorize, chains. And I actually think the domain-specific and industry/vertical specific chains are probably going to be the ones that win out, at least at the beginning, because there is a real cost associated with deploying a parachain that is only, at least at the beginning, will only be worth it for chains that are somehow platforms themselves, right? And as I described earlier, there might be an upgrade path then for chains that are being built on these platforms to maybe become parathreads or parachains. But at the beginning, I think it will be very much a kind of like a platform of platforms kind of situation where most of the parachains being built either optimized for a specific problem domain or for a specific application vertical.
Thank you. So would you guys also like to talk to us about how Polkadot can scale better? Maybe start with Ruitao.
Well, I think Polkadot scale better fundamentally Polkadot already is a proof of stake network, right? So the proof of stake nature is already have faster performance than proof of works blockchain. If you look at the scaling in general, how Polkadot scales, so Polkadot has this relay chain, which is the ultimate where the root, very similar to what we say where all the finalization happens, and it's at thousands of TPS scale, and then a Polkadot can have the initial design have 100 Parachain slots, and each individual Parachain is also a full patch blockchain, which optimize achieve hundreds of TPS as well, and all those Parachain will be executing in parallel. So like if you have 100 and then you multiply that by 100 by 1,000, and you already have a very large TPS number to work with. That's one way I can see that how Polkadot is able to scale better. The other way that you look at it is that there's also, in the future, I believe in the future, there are also pathway for Parachain itself to scale as well. So if you think about Polkadot, we think of Polkadot. So because Polkadot, the relay chain itself is one layer, and then the Parachain is then connect to that. And the Parachain itself is also a full patch blockchain. It can have its own relay chain. So it will be like Polkadot within Polkadot. And that's ultimately how to solve the scalability problem. The one other aspect that we're looking into how the scale works is that then how do you solve the communication between each different shard if they're executing in different way? And that's how the XCMP protocol is going to solve. Like the Parachain is able to talk to other Parachain trustlessly without invoking the relay chain. The design goal is to achieve that. And once that is being implemented, we can see that the scalability of the relay chain running with a lot of Parachains is gonna be, well, very well suited for medium term.
Thank you, Ruitao. Fabian, from your perspective, would you like to add some thoughts here?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that Ruitao said. There is this notion of by having another Polkadot embedded in Polkadot, like it's kind of like tree of relay chains and parachains. That's something, now that Polkadot is launched, that gets more and more attention internally. It's kind of like loosely coined Polkadot version 2, right? And we can already, reason about how that would look like. Obviously, we first have to ship some kind of like core features that are part of Polkadot version 1, meaning of what has been in the white paper, but yeah, there's already a lot of ideas around this. I think what it eventually will enable is to have a very gradual spectrum where you can trade off scalability with latency. Right? You can say, okay, I'm going pretty deep down in the tree, and I have a fourth order relay chain, and there's like my parachain somewhere, and then obviously sending messages around. It's going to have a bunch of latency, but I have really interesting scaling properties as a result of that. Right? So this is yet to be seen how stuff like that evolves, and how actually then like parachain allocations and application allocations in such a network would evolve. But in terms of as a path for like how do we make Polkadot more scalable on a very architectural level, I think that's probably the most interesting thing we can do. But even before that, I think there's a lot of things that are just optimizations, second layer scaling solutions on Polkadot and so on that will solve the problem in a more like less radical fashion, I'd say, that aren't necessarily just like re-architecting all of Polkadot.
Thank you. So my last question is actually to Jack. So Jack, I know you invested in Polkadot ecosystem. So what's your 3 favorite projects?
That's difficult. Yeah, I don't want to necessarily. I guess my job is to pick favorites in some respects. From Hypersphere, we've invested in both relay chains, KSM and DOT, Kusama and Polkadot, and then we've only made 2 or 3 investments in Parachain projects. So Acala that the Laminar and Polka Wallet team brought us, which we're really excited about, and both in the seed round and then followed on because they execute. and have a really big vision. Moonbeam, we recently led that round, and that's kind of focused on EVM compatibility. And Derek is the CEO there and a great entrepreneur. And then we're hoping to invest in another project that's yet to be announced, but hopefully in the next week or two will be. Oh, I guess we also participated in the Plasm lock drop. So kind of locked ETH for PLM. And yeah, so I am 100% biased on all 5 or 6 of this project.
Thank you. So in conclusion, Polkadot is super interesting, super important, and we're excited to see how, for example, Acala will make it even greater. Basically, make a DAO compile Uniswap synthetics or in Acala, right? So anything which is great takes time. So let's be patient and build a better future decentralized finance. So now in the end, so every guest, one very short sentence to end our show tonight. So let's start with probably Shiliang, because most of the time we are silent to listen to the other 3 experts. I think you're just waking up, so that's okay. So yeah, start with you.
Yeah, no, I think it's just incredibly exciting to just see such talented and I would say such talented just individuals building this space, and it's at the end of the day it's people that are building the ecosystem, and so the amount of talent that's coming into the DAO ecosystem is extremely encouraging. I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone will be building in the future.
Thank you, Fabian.
Yeah, I mean, for me the same, right? I'm mostly excited about what is coming, in particular in the very near future. So I've been working on Polkadot for the last 3-4 years, really, since it's just been a paper with a bunch of words on it, and now seeing Parachains actually coming to life and seeing people use the tools that you've been building to build cool stuff. That's what I'm looking forward to, and this is what we're going to see in the coming months in the Polkadot ecosystem.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, I'd say so. I made the decision in the past 6 months to double down on Polkadot. Right, I was kind of in Web3 Foundation focused on Polkadot, and now at Hypersphere, kind of more or less focused fully on Polkadot. And it's there's kind of a steeper learning curve with Polkadot. So to folks out there listening, don't get discouraged by the new words, parachains and cross-chain communicate, all this stuff. Just kind of bear through it, and hopefully we can make better analogy. Yeah, hopefully we can make, for people that just don't care, right, which is most people, maybe we could do a better job of making better analogies or metaphors about how this is like other systems that we know in the real world, be them nation states or corporations or whatever it is. So hopefully we can help us kind of dumb down the language, help us kind of make it so people can access Polkadot more easily and lower the barrier to entry on all facets. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of funding available and resources available, not just from Web3 Foundation and Hypersphere and these sorts of centralized entities, but also from Polkadot itself. It's got $40 million on the blockchain waiting to be spent, so to build the community. So there's lots of ways to get involved, and I know that's there's just so much noise in the crypto market that it's hard to pick kind of an entry point, but try to do things that are future proof and that are going to be relevant in a couple of years.
So try to be more Polkadot like inside like you guys, and be more outside like me. We're in Polkadot. Thank you. So Ruitao.
Well, we are builders, so we are even more excited than Fabian to see our product is going to go launch within the next few months. So I'm even more excited. I think the one thing I would like to add on is that developing on top of the substrate and within this Polkadot family feel very, very, how do I say, very right at home, right? So if you are a nerd and if you're looking to build something within using substrate or within the Polkadot family, just get in touch with Fabian, with Jack. This is probably one of the most one of the best time to get in to build on Polkadot, right? Everyone is a companion, everyone is your friend. We believe that we are all in this together. So, well, the technology might be some learning curve too, but once you get used to it, it's like you have a lot more power to build great stuff. So yeah, do it.
Polkadot family united. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Ruitao, now you can go to sleep. And
Thank you.
Have a good day, Jack and Shiliang and Fabian. Goodbye from Beijing. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Yama.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.